Good evening and welcome to the show. Our topic tonight is elderly abuse, and we're talking to Professor RBurton in the Department of Social Work and Sociology at Tennessee State University. And Professor Burton, let me welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
Professor Burton, one of the things that we've dealt with over the last several months in terms of trying to pull together some information dealing with the elderly is to identify elderly abuse as one of the problems that is not often addressed. As a matter of fact, I think it's often declared to be one of the hidden crimes within our community. And we'd like tonight to talk about elderly abuse as a hidden crime. And to start this program off, let us talk about your definition of elderly abuse.
Okay, Dr. Haney, a very broad definition of elderly abuse would be the physical, psychological, and material and abandonment of an elderly person. It covers a very wide range of aspects in dealing with forms of abuses of the elderly. But from a broader definition, this would be basically what elderly abuse is.
Now, when we talk about elderly abuse, I also understand that we talk about general types of elderly abuse, indicating that there are certain areas where some persons might be abused and others might not be abused, indicating these types. Why don't you give us some information relative to the certain types of elderly abuse?
Okay, I think I'll start by giving, just listing some of the types of elderly abuse. You have physical abuse, you have psychological abuse, you have neglect, which would include passive neglect and active neglect. You also have financial exploitation. In looking at physical abuse deals with the infliction of physical harm upon an elderly person or sexually abusing of an elderly person. When we look at psychological abuse, we're looking at the infliction of mental anguish on an elderly person or the invoking of fear unto the elderly person. When we look at financial exploitation, we're looking at the use of resources of the elderly person by the caretaker or children for their own personal gains. When we look at active neglect, this is willfully withholding food or medication by the caretaker from the elderly person. When we look at passive neglect, we're looking at neglect by the caretaker who is unable to take care of the elderly person because of their lack of knowledge to do so. So this would address the different types of elderly abuse that we deal with in this country.
Okay, why not give us an example? For example, when we talk about physical abuse, I think that most of us are familiar with physical abuse because this is generally the kind of abuse that appears in the newspaper, on television, etc. But why don't you give us an example and make a couple of statements in reference to the various types of elderly abuse and how people might be able to identify whether or not they are caught up in elderly abuse.
Okay, I think one that I will deal with more specifically will be that of material or economic abuse. That's called financial exploitation, which is one of the best kept secrets of a form of abuse that's going around right now. When we look at financial exploitation, this is the taking of the elderly person's check or their monies from their pocketbooks or what have you. This would also be taking any type of resource and converting it to your own personal use without the permission or authorization of the elderly person. Now, one of the things that we have to look at in addressing this particular form of abuse, first of all, it's one that it's not highly reported. It takes place very highly, but it's not highly reported for this reason. Number one, if this is taking place with a family member, it would cause a great deal of embarrassment if someone was to report that. So for this reason, that's one of the reasons why it's not reported. Another reason why it's not reported, for instance, if you were the caretaker of the elderly person and you were willfully taking their resources and you were reported and arrested, then the elderly person would not have anyone to take care of them. So for this reason, many times denial is used about reporting it and with the fact that it is going on. So these would just be some examples of financial exploitation as it relates to elderly abuse.
Now, it seems in financial exploitation,